Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about point of aim shifts with different magnifiers or having or not having a magnifier. And I've done videos in the past on this. In the past I only had one magnifier to use as a comparison, the Holosun 3X HM. So there's a 3X magnifier from Holosun. It's a when I bought it, it was $200. I think now you can get them for as low as $150. A great magnifier. I actually have, I think, at least 3 of these. They work really good. But I also have the Vortex 6X magnifier. Okay, so there's a 6 times magnifier. This is a $400 magnifier. This is proven to be awesome for, especially if you're shooting at 300 yards plus. This is a great magnifier. So today my goal initially was just to change the optic on this AR pistol because the last time I was shooting this at 300 yards, I had the circle dot, right? It was a 2 MOA dot with a 65 MOA circle, and I wasn't happy with the group. I mean, I was getting like 10 inches at 300 yards, which is not terrible, but when I had shot that same distance with the 10.5 inch, I got like 3 1/4 inches at 300 yards, and I think the difference was in the optic, because when I shot the 3 1/4 inch group, the optic had the Holosun 503G ACSS. So instead of having a 2 MOA dot, it has a chevron with a tip, which gives you a really fine aiming point, especially when you're using a magnifier, right? Because the magnifier basically kind of blows everything up, right? It blows up your dot, but it also blows up the target behind it. But the nice thing is, if you're using the chevron, which has a fine tip, it blows up the target, right? But the tip is really fine, so it's almost like the tip does not get enlarged. So you have a really fine aiming point. So that was today's goal. I wanted to get a Holosun 503G on this AR pistol so I could test it out at some distance and really get a better idea. See if I can tighten up my group. Because like I said, the last time I shot this, I got 10 inches at 300 yards. I think I can do a little bit better if I have a finer aiming point. So, so today I put on that. I put it on. First, I zeroed in at 50 yards. Okay. I believe I zeroed about 1 inch low at 50 yards because that usually gives me a zero at 100 yards, or at least gets me pretty close where I can make some, where I can fine adjust it a little bit. So at 100 yards, okay, first of all, at the 50 yards, I did it with first I did it with no magnifier, then I did it with a 3X Holosun 3X magnifier, then I did it with the Vortex 6X magnifier, and in all of those there was a shift, right, as I went from one to the other. I said, let's go out to 100 yards, see if I get, what it looks like out there. So at 100 yards, basically the Holosun 3X magnifier is grouping up here, okay, whereas the Vortex is grouping down here. And I'm using the same ammunition, right? I'm using Tula on both of these. The reason why I'm using Tula is because I intend to shoot this with the 77 grain Sierra Match Kings. That's a heavier bullet. The 55 grain Tulas are typically a little bit slower than your normal 55 grain. So by using the Tula, it helps me get a faster, cheaper zero. That's pretty close to what the 77 grain is. And then once I'm happy with my Tula zero at 100 yards, then I'll shoot some 77 grains and fine tune it and get exactly where I want it. So that's the reason why I'm using Tula. I use Tula so much because a 100 yard zero with a 55 grain Tula is very close to a 77 grain match grade zero. Okay, at 100 yards. So when I shot this first, I shot this with the Holosun 3X magnifier, right? So with the 3X magnifier, you can see it's grouping up here, okay? And then I shot it with the Vortex, right? I switched it out, put the Vortex on it. You can see how it clearly drops over here, okay? Again, I'm using that fine tip over here, and I know Tula, it's not that the tool isn't accurate. Usually, like I find like 1 out of 6 rounds is like really off, you know, because you can see up here, I got a really nice tight group. And then out here, like you know, it opened up a little bit. So tool is like that. Like I find that it's not as consistent, but within the batch, you will get some really tight groups. Okay, so anyway, the Holosun 3X is up here. The Vortex 6X clearly dropped about 3 inches, right? Again, using that fine tip over here. And hey, listen, even if I'm not doing my best shooting today, you know, I might be a little bit off, but I'm not going to be like that much off, okay? You know, you guys watch me shoot on this channel, you know I can, you know, I'm not going to move it. I'm not going to be that far off, okay? And then what I did is I took off the magnifier altogether, right? Took off the magnifier, and the bullets were impacting underneath the target, okay? Now, in the past, what I have learned is because of this impact shift with the magnifiers, what I do is I zero in with whatever magnifier I plan to use. So in this case, I'm going to zero in with the Vortex because that's 6X. I'm going to be shooting at 300 yards and plus, you know, maybe a little bit more. So I want to have maximum magnification on the day that I'm testing this. So I'm going to zero in with the Vortex. So and then what I do is if I'm not using the magnifier, right? What I do is instead of because clearly when you take off the magnifier, they tend to drop. I've seen that consistently over time, that when you take off the magnifier, the group drops a little bit. And what I do is if I'm shooting without the magnifier, instead of trying to put the tip of the chevron underneath the bullseye, I put the whole arrow on top of it, right? So when you put the arrow on top of it and use the chevron as a dot, basically your tip ends up here somewhere, right? And then your bullets start impact pretty close to your bullseye. So that's what I have learned to do, you know, when you're using the magnifier, not using the magnifier. You know, so in my opinion, if you're planning to be shooting this at distance with the magnifier, zero in with the magnifier, okay? Because when you remove the magnifier, you know what? At distance, you know, if you put the dot, if you put your chevron, your dot on it, it's not gonna make that much of a difference. But if you zero in with your dot or your chevron only, right, and then you go to use the magnifier, you know, now you're gonna see a big difference, right? Because now you have that magnification, you have a finer aiming point. So that's my opinion on that. Zero in with the magnifier, then if you're, you know, then when you take the magnifier off, it's not going to make that big of a difference. Especially because remember, without the magnifier, you're going to pretty much be shooting at a, you know, max 100 yards. Okay, because I shoot like that at 100 yards. You know, if I'm using a 2MOA dot, I mean, the dot basically takes up, like, you know, it looks like my hand here at 100 yards, right? So it's really hard to center it. With the chevron, it's a little bit easier because I can put the tip underneath it. But again, like I said, the bullets impact too low. So if I take the arrow and I just put it on top, I group almost center. So that works really good for me. Now, I know some people are going to jump up and say, hey, parallax, you know, there's a parallax issue. First, let me explain what they're talking about. Parallax is like when you're holding the gun, if your head is slightly off and your dot is not perfectly centered. You know, I'm aware of it. For this testing that I'm doing, believe me, I'm perfectly sure, I'm absolutely sure that the dot, or the chevron in this case, is perfectly centered, okay? Now, the parallax can be an issue if you're not aware of it, if you're not looking for it, if you don't have the magnifier in the back. But once you put the magnifier on, and you're looking through this, basically two tubes, right? With the magnifier on, you're gonna know if you're not centered, okay? So it's not a question of you not centering yourself perfectly when the magnifier is on. It's a question of maybe you're not centering yourself perfectly when you don't have the magnifier. But in this case, I'm comparing two different magnifiers. In both cases, I'm looking through a tube, and it's easy for me to see that I'm centered because in this case, the 65 MOA horseshoe, it goes almost to the edge of the optic, you know, when you're looking at it in the glass, you know, with the magnification. So it's almost at the edge of the glass, so I can clearly see if it's not centered. So I've done this enough times where I can absolutely say there is a shift, right? And there, not only is there a shift if you have a magnifier versus if you don't have a magnifier, But there will also be a shift if you go from one magnifier to a different magnifier, right? Now, one of the things I will say though is I do have a slight stigmatism, okay? And the magnifiers are great because I can adjust the focal piece in the back here, the diopter, to get a nice crisp image of the reticle on the target. Okay, so that might be an issue because if a different person gets on the gun and they readjust that magnifier, it might, you know, so if there was somebody, let's say I had like perfect vision and they didn't have to adjust that magnifier, maybe they won't have a shift with the magnifier or versus having the magnifier versus not having the magnifier. I can't answer that question, but I just want to make you guys aware that I do have a little bit of astigmatism, and adjusting the diopter on the magnifier is something that I have to do, and it gives me a nice crisp image. Okay, so I can't know for sure to what extent that affects the this shift that we're talking about. Other thing that's worth saying, AR pistols are extremely loud. Today it's raining, and basically I have a canopy and I'm shooting under the canopy. And when you're shooting underneath the canopy, the sound echoes like back down on you. Since this gun is so freaking loud and the noise is echoing back on you, basically I'm doubling up on the earmuffs. Normally I don't if the canopy is not over my head, but because I'm getting the sound echoing down from the canopy, basically I had to double up today while I was shooting this. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is protect your ears, guys. Ear damage is cumulative. Okay, eardrums don't repair themselves. What happens is every time you stretch your eardrums, right, and loud sounds do that. They stretch your eardrums. You do a little bit of, if you overstretch the eardrums, you do a little bit of damage, and it's cumulative. Every time that happens, your ears get a little bit worse. Okay, and over the course of your lifetime, basically you slowly go deaf, or at least lose your hearing. So I'm not shy about doubling up on ear protection when I need to. I mean, I shoot every day. All right, if I didn't take care of my ears, I'd be deaf by now. So another important point I wanted to bring out to you guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, I look forward to. Actually, I'm still not quite done zeroing this, because what I'm going to do now is I want to bring this. Because I'm going to be shooting the Vortex when I go to the other, when I'm shooting this 300 yards plus. I want to move this group a little higher up over here, so I'm gonna go back and readjust this. But I wanted to put this video out there so that you guys are aware that, yeah, as you go from one magnifier to the other, it is very likely that you will see some type of a shift. And there's plenty of people out there that say you won't, but you know something? Try it for yourself. I mean, if it shifts, just be aware that there's a shift for you, right? And in that case, zero in with the magnifier on. When you take off the magnifier, it won't make that much of a difference. So thanks for watching, and I will talk to you guys soon.